Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here in Shanghai, China. It's great to be back. I'm really grateful to the world around, Fondation Cartier, and the Power Station for having me here and the rest of these great speakers that you'll be listening to today. So I would say a big round of applause for that collaboration. About 13 years ago, I witnessed a flood in Lagos that was to change the trajectory of my career. It essentially created a condition that allowed me to see a totally different perspective and to realize that water would become the new landscape for architecture and urbanism. In 2011, I was researching affordable housing, trying to solve the challenges of urbanization in cities that are expanding around the world, and particularly in African cities. And I was caught in this flood which became this reoccurring event, and realized through research that this was sort of an insight into an occurrence that would become what we now know as climate change. And the impact was that we realized that our cities are sinking and that water would become a very important part of our urban landscape, and that, instead of constantly fighting water, why don't we learn to live with it? So this in a way became the blueprint for what we call the African Water Cities, kind of an adaptation measure to address the issues. And it led us to create this vision, which we call the African Water Cities ecosystem. And it's essentially a nature-based solution for smart resiliency, creating sort of carbon offsets, scalable ideas of how you create a hybrid of solutions that allow water into the real estate of urban fabric. Essentially, making sure that you create more room for nature within the built space. Now, you may know or may not know, but 80% of all our major cities and capitals and nearly 50% of the human population actually live next to water, some form of water body. And the significant population and the growth of these cities happen in Asia and Asian cities, and also in Africa and African cities. And specifically in Africa, nearly 70% of all our cities are actually by waterfront. These kinds of occurrences, these kinds of images are becoming more and more frequent, and you see them a lot now, not only in African cities, but all over the world. The impact of sea level rise, global warming, and climate change, specifically with cities being flooded. And for us, this is both a challenge, but also an opportunity to rethink how we develop our cities and communities. And the objective of the project that I will discuss today is really to create a sustainable solution that might become a model to address this sort of social and environmental challenge. Over the 13 years that I had this observation, we began doing a lot of research, and we recently published a book called The African Water Cities. Essentially, it's a compendium of all the looking through various cities across the continent and identifying where you have both the confluence of challenges and opportunities, essentially where cities are growing along the coastal or river or water bodies, and where you have challenges of climate change. In 2012, we began the construction of what would become the first prototype for a way of building and living on water. And when you think about the time when, this was 10, 12 years ago, climate change was almost a question that is, that we had a lot of critics, and people in various fields still thought this was a myth. And a community like Makoko, which I will tell you about, which is the city community in the background consisting of nearly 70,000 people, were already living. And while I was researching affordable housing, I thought, if people could build so cheaply and so easily and with little resources and build in nature, and if I'm trying to solve affordable housing, what if we learn from them? And more so that they're already dealing with how to live and build on water. Perhaps this might be an insight into the future of architecture and urbanism, or the future of development and human life with nature. And the project was actually supported by the UNDP and the Federal Ministry of Environment under the Climate Change Adaptation Program. So it was an innovation that was nowhere near perfect. It was really a proof of concept to see how we can build locally using material, using local resources within a place that had scarcity of resources and means, but creating something that was almost attracting the community, but producing a condition that could be anywhere near perfect. Fast forward 10 years later, we have built this structure now in 6 countries across 3 continents, and our latest version, which is the Mansa Floating Hub in Cabo Verde, in São Vicente Island, consists of 3 structures, which I'll show you a little bit more about later. But essentially, it's the, let's say, the most advanced version. It's essentially a collection of structures built very simply with simple building techniques. You can build it by hand, you can assemble it and disassemble it, and you can create a new sort of frontier of building on water and be used for various facilities. Now, we've gotten a lot of support from the UN, and this has become sort of an effort supported through various agencies in the UN to address the issue of climate change. So we have the support from the UNDP, UN Habitat, and several agencies now to look at how we can both develop the community itself, but also scale this as a solution across Africa. This, of course, has benefits for the blue economy, green economy, and, of course, various ways of addressing solutions that would have benefits to the overall human condition and environmental condition. Like I mentioned, over the last 13 years, we built it in Lagos, in Venice, Italy, Belgium, Bruges, and Chengdu in China, and of course, Cape Verde. This was the second version we built. We called the MFS2 in Venice. And the third version was more refined, and we refined the engineering to Eurocodes. You can see how it begins to sort of even become more within a modular system. And in 2018, we had the opportunity, we're thinking, how do we scale this modular system, a structural frame that was simple? How do we make it into something more replicable, something larger? And we took the same structural system, which was 3 floors, essentially, had the potential to be 3 floors, and created 2-floor version and a 1-floor version to produce a small, a medium, and a large structures, combination of structures. And of course, if you want to multiply and scale things, where else do you do it better than China? So we had the great opportunity to be in China, in Chengdu, to do this fabulous project with the support of the Centre Pompidou and Mao Zedong Foundation and several other partners in creating this prototype of a small community that began to kind of create a landscape within water itself. And you can see it was integrated even with a lot of the natural materials, bamboo being abundant in Chengdu and the region. It was used for concerts. It was really, and also a space for love. You would see even the screens at the back there is all just fluted strips of bamboo, basically bringing landscape and nature as part of the fabric of the building itself. We've gotten, of course, a lot of media attention and coverage on the projects, and we've been very glad to see that. But mainly because we see that land has become somewhat overrated as a means of human development, and that water is the new asset. And that actually communities, both in Asia, many communities are beginning to occupy this area as a new frontier for development, but also historically, this is where perhaps the seat of human civilization has been, next to water. When you think about it, there's always been a reason for humans to settle next to water, whether it is just water for life, as a source of life, or transportation, or agriculture. We've always settled next to water. And now, because of the impact of climate change and the impact of sea level rise, we're seeing this convergence of growth of cities and communities around that. So our position is, why fight water when you can learn to live with it? We're not the only ones that hold this position. There's a lot of news all around the world showing that the sea level rise will erase cities. Forbes says this is the next big real estate boom. And the UN says floating cities could ease the world's housing crunch. We've also been opportune to have the project being recognized as one of the works at this sort of forefront of thinking through, and particularly our approach to thinking about solutions that are locally attainable. So in a way, creating solutions that leave no one behind. It's quite easy with a lot of resource to build any kind of structure, but how can you create one that is easy to be built by anyone with very simple tools in any part of the world, and make it so simple to conceive using local materials and local resources? We did that by simply learning from the environments, learning from the existing landscapes. And you would see that there are hundreds of communities on water in Africa and Asia, whether it's in Benin, in Nigeria, in Senegal, or in Malaysia, Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Brunei. There are communities all over the world that somehow, in a way, they may be sort of the DNA of the human civilization and how cities are actually formed. And that it is time to maybe think through that again and go back to the history of how cities are developed to find how to build in much more sustainable way, recognizing that water is part of our urban landscape. Specifically in Asia, there's now emerging developments that are focused on building housing on water, like large-scale housing in the Philippines, in Brunei, and also in South America and Venezuela, we've seen examples. And also sponge cities. I'm sure most of you or some of you would know the ideas behind building sponge cities as a solution for adapting. Now, none of these solutions may be perfect, but we believe that creating ways of finding a way to build and bridge this relationship between man and nature, or humans and nature, is a way forward. There are large-scale buildings. They're sort of more archetypal cities on water or by water, also in other parts of the world, whether it's in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, or in Bruges in Belgium, or the archetypical city on water, Venice in Italy. But also Marina, in Chicago, a city like Chicago, we think it's a city on water with several bridges and canals and waterways running through it, with even the Marina Towers, with a building that is a tower with its footprints. So our idea is really that we can create a hybrid of developments and solutions from land to water, a whole transition and ecosystem comprising of various building solutions. So in 2011, when we began this project, we actually learned from this community called Makoko, a rather poor community that people lived in very harsh conditions. And they were, in fact, being challenged to be evicted by the government at the time to leave the area that they had occupied. And we intervened by saying that we could create a solution for building. And started a pilot project in this community that you'd see largely on water. And currently, we have an area of nearly 54 hectares and an area of about 3 hectares to begin a pilot, envisioning a community that could be a hybrid of various building solutions that could begin to create a new urban environment on and around water. And but also providing solutions for infrastructure, waste management, water, transportation, aquaculture, food production, essentially, creating a whole new ecosystem that relies on water as the urban landscape and urban space, while also ensuring that the solutions are sustainable and environmentally conscious. Since 2011, we've built the first prototype. We've built now 6 prototypes and scaled to at the architectural level, 1 building solution out of many types of typologies that we're going to develop. And we're now scaling into a pilot community on about 3 hectares in Makoko, where we began, and looking at this sort of a timeline to develop a solution for expanding. And of course, it's very important to also consider the elements that would drive this development, the financial structure that would make this viable, looking at mixtures of how we get equity, how we get use debt, but also grants supporting. And recently we got support to raise about $10 million for the first pilot, what would become a pilot project, and perhaps the first purpose-built water-based community in Africa, supported by the Lagos state government. And we began the fundraising to actually do that. To then, there are a series of steps in allowing us to get to a point where we can start the execution of the project. This has been a journey. We're now at a position where we're about to begin the pilot and scale up and create partnerships and welcome various entities to support this agenda in moving forward, and also bringing expertise. I'm sure there are many people amongst us here and everywhere in the world to come be part of this movement. I'm going to finish with a 1-minute video, very quick video of the MFS, which is just really one out of many building solutions and infrastructure solutions that will be part of this ecosystem of creating an innovation hub within this pilot project, and a space to develop solutions that are for a specific environment in producing a new form of architecture and urbanism on water as a new landscape. Thank you.